Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at this video all about thriving in chaos, and it's based on this concept of anti-fragility. Have you ever, thought about the fact that some things just totally fall apart when, random stuff happens, but then other things, they kind of get stronger?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Like what makes something able to not just survive chaos, but actually benefit from it.
So we're talking about more than just, being resilient, right?
Exactly. Like think about it this way. There are things that are fragile, right? They break easily under pressure.
Yeah, like if I drop this coffee mug, it's gone.
Exactly. And then you have things that are robust. They can withstand a certain amount of stress, but they don't really change or improve because of it.
Like a rock, I guess.
Exactly. A rock is robust. But anti-fragile things, they're different. They actually need stressors and randomness to grow and improve.
So it's like they get stronger the more you kind of beat them up?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Think of a muscle. The more you work it out, the stronger it gets. Anti-fragile systems are similar. They get better with stress.
So that's what this video is exploring. What makes something anti-fragile?
Exactly. And it gives some really cool examples, like thriving ecosystems.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Like a forest fire can actually be good for a forest in the long run.
Right, exactly.
Right.
It clears out the underbrush, allows new growth, and the ecosystem as a whole becomes more diverse and resilient.
Wow, so it's not just about surviving. It's about actually getting better because of those challenges.
Right. And the video makes this point that it's not just nature either. You see this in successful entrepreneurs too.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, think about it. Entrepreneurs are constantly facing challenges, right? Market shifts, competition, failed products.
Yeah, for sure. It's like a roller coaster.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But the successful ones, they don't let those setbacks break them. They learn from their mistakes, adapt, and come back stronger.
So failure is like a necessary part of the process?
It can be. And the video argues that this applies to all of us in every area of life, whether it's our careers, relationships, personal growth.
Okay, so this idea of anti-fragility, it's not just some abstract theory. It's something we can actually cultivate in our own lives.
Exactly. That's what's so exciting about it.
So how do we do that? How do we become more anti-fragile?
Well, the video lays out 3 key steps.
All right, hit me.
Step 1, embrace challenges.
Okay, that makes sense, I guess. If we're always playing it safe, we'll never learn to handle the tough stuff.
Right. Step 2, cultivate optionality.
Optionality.
Okay, I'm not sure what that means.
It's about creating choices for yourself, keeping your options open. Instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, you have multiple baskets.
I see. So if one thing fails, you've got other things to fall back on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, step 3, learn to love randomness.
Learn to love randomness. Wait, what?
I know it sounds crazy, right? But it's about shifting your perspective. Instead of seeing randomness as a threat, you start to see it as an opportunity for growth and innovation.
Okay, I'm going to need some help wrapping my head around that one. Don't worry, we'll dig into each of these steps in more detail. But first, I think it's helpful to hear the personal story that the video host shares.
Ooh, I love a good personal story.
Yeah.
It's always more relatable when you hear how these concepts play out in real life.
Exactly. So the host talks about how they took this big leap of faith and decided to go into self-employment.
Oh, wow, that's a big one. There's so much uncertainty that comes with that.
Right. It was definitely a chaotic time for them. But instead of letting fear paralyze them, they embraced that chaos. They learned from every mistake, adapted their approach, and ultimately built a successful business.
So their story is like a real-world example of how anti-fragility can lead to positive outcomes.
Exactly. And I think it sets the stage nicely for us to dive deeper into those 3 steps and how we can all cultivate a little more anti-fragility in our own lives.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's unpack those 3 steps for becoming more anti-fragile. The first one was embracing challenges, and I think we've kind of covered that. But cultivating optionality, that one feels kind of tricky. What does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, sounds kind of abstract.
Well, think of it like this. Let's say you're building a career. Instead of focusing all your energy on one specific path, what if you learned a bunch of different skills?
So like having a backup plan.
It's more than just a backup plan. It's about creating choices for yourself. So you could be learning new technologies, building your network, maybe even exploring a side hustle.
So if things don't work out in one area, you've got other options to explore.
Exactly. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket. And that applies to other parts of life, too, like relationships.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Like making sure you have your own interests and friends outside of the relationship.
Right. So you're not completely dependent on that one person for your happiness.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
So cultivating optionality is about diversifying your life, basically.
exactly. And it ties in really well with the 3rd step, learning to love randomness.
Oh, yeah, that one still feels kind of mind-blowing to me.
I know it's a big shift, But think about it. When you have more options, you're less afraid of the unexpected because you know you have the flexibility to adapt.
Okay, I'm starting to see how that works.
Yeah.
But how do we actually go from fearing the unknown to like embracing it?
Well, it starts with recognizing that randomness is just a part of life. You can't control everything.
Easier said than done, right?
For sure. But remember that example from the video about the plant that gets stronger after a drought?
Yeah, because it has to grow deeper roots to survive.
Exactly. So instead of trying to prevent every possible setback, we should focus on building the resilience to weather them.
So we're not avoiding the storms. We're learning to dance in the rain.
I like that analogy. And when something unexpected happens, instead of freaking out, try getting curious. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this to my advantage?
So like that classic saying, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Exactly. Maybe that job loss leads you to a career you never even considered. Or a relationship ending opens the door to an
Oh,
even
yeah.
better one.
Okay, that's a pretty powerful way to look at things. But it's definitely a mental shift.
It is. And it takes practice. It's not about becoming some chaos junkie. It's about gradually building your tolerance for uncertainty.
And the video host talked about their own experience with this, right? When they decided to go into self-employment.
Yeah, they talked about how terrifying it was at first. No guaranteed income, no safety net, just a ton of unknowns.
So how did they deal with all that uncertainty?
They embraced it. They focused on learning as much as they could, experimenting with different approaches and constantly adapting.
So they weren't afraid to make mistakes.
Not at all. They saw mistakes as valuable learning experiences.
That's a great way to reframe failure.
It is, and they also emphasized the importance of building systems and strategies that are inherently anti-fragile.
What does that mean exactly?
So it could be things like creating multiple streams of income instead of relying on just one, or building a strong support network, or developing a mindfulness practice to help you stay grounded.
So it's about creating more stability and resilience in all areas of your life so you're less afraid of the unexpected.
Exactly. And as you start to see the positive results of this approach, that fear will gradually be replaced with confidence.
Okay, this is all making a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder, are there situations where anti-fragility isn't the best approach?
That's a great question, and it's important to remember that anti-fragility is not a one-size-fits-all solution.
So how do we know when to embrace randomness and when to be more cautious?
Well, it depends on the context and the potential consequences, right? Like, you wouldn't want to embrace randomness when you're performing brain surgery.
Yeah, I guess you need a little more precision in that situation.
Exactly. There are definitely areas where minimizing risk is crucial. But even in those fields, there might be other aspects where anti-fragility could be beneficial.
Like what?
Well, think about the training of surgeons or the systems they use to adapt to unexpected situations during an operation.
Oh, I see. So it's about applying the principles of anti-fragility strategically, not just randomly embracing chaos in every situation.
Exactly. It's about finding the right balance, and that requires careful thought and analysis.
This whole conversation has me thinking about anti-fragility on a larger scale. Like, could we create organizations or even whole societies that are anti-fragile?
That's a really interesting question. Imagine a society that not only withstands crises, but actually gets stronger because of them.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Like, instead of fearing economic downturns or social upheaval, we'd have systems in place to adapt and innovate.
Exactly. It would require a fundamental shift in how we approach problem solving and decision making.
So instead of clinging to rigid top-down models, we'd need to embrace more decentralized, flexible systems.
Right. Systems that can respond to change quickly and effectively.
So more experimentation, more willingness to challenge the status quo, and less fear of failure.
Exactly. And a greater emphasis on collaboration and diversity of thought. Because when you bring together people with different perspectives, you create a system that's more adaptable and resilient.
It's like those ecosystems we talked about earlier. The more diverse they are, the more resilient they are to change.
Right. And there are definitely organizations and communities out there that are embracing these principles, particularly in the tech world and in social entrepreneurship.
Oh, that's encouraging to hear. It gives me hope that we can build a future that's not just sustainable, but actually thrives on challenges.
Me too. And it all starts with a shift in mindset. Embracing a growth mindset is key to cultivating anti-fragility on both an individual and a collective level.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into anti-fragility, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. Don't be afraid of the unknown. Embrace the challenges that life throws at you as opportunities to grow and learn.
And remember, you have the power to cultivate anti-fragility in your own life starting today. Make conscious choices, build resilient systems, and reframe your relationship with risk and uncertainty.
This video was a great starting point, but if you're ready to dive deeper, I highly recommend checking out the book Antifragile by Nassim Taleb.
And a great place to start is the Bookie app. They have an awesome summary of Antifragile that will give you a solid foundation.
You can find a link to that summary in the show notes. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing the unexpected